Hello my loves, it's time to chat about everything that I read in September. I have moved into Dan's house for a month, so please forgive any echoing and the bare walls while we get settled. First up, I want to talk about The Husbands because I have not spoken about this in any video yet, and this book really got to me. In this book, our main character comes home one day to find that there is a husband in her house, and she's like a little freaked out by this guy who's in her home. And then she quickly figures out that anytime her husband goes in the attic, he disappears and a new husband comes out. Along with the new husband, there's kind of a whole nother life that she's experiencing, and so she kind of gets to try on these different lives and these different husbands, and anytime she wants to switch one out, she just sends him into the attic. This book has so much to say about relationships and how to have a meaningful relationship when there is seemingly endless possibility. It talks about one of my favorite dating advice mathematical things, which is the secretary problem. If you have to hire a secretary and there's a pool of candidates and you have to tell each one after they leave if you're going to give them the job or not, how many people should you interview, what benchmark should you use? That was explored in this book in a really interesting way. The premise is very reminiscent of The Midnight Library, except obviously more relationship focused, and I really loved this book. I thought it did a fantastic job at what it was trying to achieve. I really liked the ways that the book kind of fleshed out all of these different possibilities and all of the different husbands that we got to see and all of the different ways that this unexplained phenomenon was happening. Then let's chat briefly about all of the romances that I read. I filmed a video leading up to my engagement, so if you want to watch that, I'll link that up there and in the description. But I read Sail Be Mine by Naina Kumar, and I didn't love this one. I give it 2 stars. It's a fake dating arranged marriage type situation. I really liked our main character, but I really didn't like anyone else in this book. Her friends were doing some interesting things. I didn't really love her fake fiance. I didn't really believe in her reason to do the fake engagement in the first place. Just wasn't really my cup of tea. But it did have some really interesting things to say about marriage and the really hard experience to overcome if your parents didn't have a good relationship, how to believe in the concept of marriage and in a good relationship. I thought that was explored really well in there. I also read Just for the Summer, which is one of my all-time favorite romances ever. I absolutely adored this one. It's set in my home state of Minnesota and I really loved going back there. The premise of this one is also hilarious. It starts with an Am I the Asshole post in which Justin talks about this curse that he has, and our female main character Emma shares the same curse. So anytime that they date somebody, after they break up, the person that they were dating, the next person that they meet ends up being the person that they marry. And so they decide they're gonna date each other just for the summer, and then they'll break up and find their soulmates, but obviously they're gonna fall in love with each other. I cried. I sobbed so much reading this book. I cried in a public park. I cried in the comfort of my own home. I cried absolutely anywhere and everywhere reading this book. Because one, it does that thing that always makes me cry where like something bad happens to someone and then someone treats them nicely, immediate tears. And then it also really beautifully portrayed a relationship that has real issues. Like, these people are very clearly right for each other and they're very clearly good for each other, but they also have their own journeys to go on. They have their own responsibilities and they have their own traumas that they need to work through. And that was really comforting to see on page, because I feel like most romances are like, you get the beginning happy fun times of the relationship, and then once they get together, everything's sunshine and rainbows, they get married and everything's perfect. You and I know that that's not how life happens. It really felt like these were two people who were approaching this relationship and trying to figure out how they would do life together and how they would fit into each other's worlds. This is part of the Part of Your World series, so makes sense. I found every single page of this to be absolutely perfect, and I will take no notes on this book. Thank you, by the way, to everyone who recommended that I read this on my Instagram, because you were very right. Let's move on to something that you haven't heard me talk about in a video yet. I read the second Dune book, Dune Messiah. It was interesting. I had a good time with it. I didn't like it as much as I liked Dune. I really loved the first Dune. This one was a little bit more macro, I feel like, and the things that we were talking about, maybe just because it was so much shorter than the first book. I didn't feel like we had enough time to like fully be in these storylines, and I kind of wish that it was just like tacked on to the first book, if that makes sense, or maybe the first book should have ended, if you know, where that time jump happens. It just didn't feel like there was enough here to be a full novel. It kind of had second book in a trilogy syndrome. So I'm excited to read the rest of the series, but I do feel like I am a little bit detached from the world now. I felt like because the first book moved so slowly in that first chunk of it, I felt so connected to the characters and everything that was going on. And then once we started covering larger periods of time, I kind of not lost interest, but lost connection with some characters. But we'll definitely still be continuing in the series. I think I'll probably wait until the next Dune movie, or maybe even the one after that, depending on how much time they end up covering, to continue in the series. Okay, more romance to talk about. Funny You Should Ask by Eliza Sussman was okay. I think I told you I gave it like a 3-star. It was fine. I enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed it as a book more than as a romance. I didn't really love the romance aspect of it, but I thought it was an interesting book to read. Our male main character, he is this like famous actor, and 10 years ago, they both had this interview together. So she was interviewing him, her name is Khani, and his name is Gabe. So Gabe was the new Bond. She did this interview with him, and his career really got catapulted after he had this role, and her piece really helped the people to accept him as the new Bond because he was like the first American Bond. Nobody liked him for the role, but after her piece came out, everyone kind of fell in love with him. And that piece also really helped her in her career. So now 10 years later, they're getting together again. They're doing another interview. Everyone's wondering whether or not anything happened between them and what went on with that. It honestly felt more like a drama than it did like a romance. Like it felt more Daisy Jones and the Six than it felt like rom-com vibes. I enjoyed the book. I just wasn't convinced that they knew enough about each other to want to be romantically involved. But I did really like the friendships in here. Like Gabe's friend is incredible and I love him, and I'm really glad that him and Hani became friends because they were great. Okay, something else I haven't talked about yet is Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. I finally read this book and it was so good. This is one of those books that has been on my radar for so long. Everybody who has the same reading taste as me loves this book, and I don't know why it's taken me this long to read it, but it was incredible. Our main character gets this call from her friend, and her friend asks her to come kind of be like this governess for these children. She gets there and the children spontaneously combust. They burst into flames. I thought it was gonna be more of a cheeky story. The tone of it was much different than I thought it was gonna be. I thought it was gonna be like the September House type vibes, if you've read that book, like Rachel Harrison, like tongue-in-cheek type writing. That's not how this was written. It was written very seriously and very literary. We got a lot of our main character's past with this girl who asks her to come watch these kids. That was so interesting because I felt like it really set up this character extremely well. It really felt like our main character Lillian went through her life with a lot of potential, through things that were not really in her power to change, lost a lot of really important opportunities. Because of that, hasn't really done much with her life, and it felt like these children coming into her life was like the opportunity that she wasn't gonna mess up, and just the way that she showed up for these children was incredible. It actually reminded me a lot of like, this is gonna be the most ridiculous comparison, and if you are a parent, I promise I'm not equating children to animals, but it felt similarly to the vibes of like somebody who goes into a shelter and sees this dog who's, you know, cowering in the back of the cage and is lashing out at people, maybe has bitten someone, and they take that dog and they put so much love into that animal and teach it to trust humans again, and then it becomes like the most cuddly, like sweetest animal ever. And that's kind of how I felt about this arc that these children and our main character Lillian went on, and these kids became so fiercely protective of her, and I just loved watching her take care of them and stand up for them. And it kind of felt like she wasn't able to stand up for herself in her life and ask for the things that she needed in order to set herself up for success. And she was not about to let that happen to these kids. And I really loved watching that journey play out. And I hope that that's the kind of mom that I'll be one day. And then finally, our last romance that we read was Something Wilder by Christina Lauren. This is my first Christina Lauren. I think I will try more of her stuff in the future. This is 2 authors writing under 1 pen name. From what I could see as far as reviews, this is quite a departure from their usual work. So you guys let me know if you like Something Wilder, which Christina Lauren I should pick up next, which one is the most similar, or if I will like any of their other stuff. But this one was a very fun romance. It was a lot higher stakes than I thought it was going to be. Like, people are held up at gunpoint. It is like, stakes are high. But it starts off as our main character. Her name is Lily, and she takes tourists on the outlaw trail for like this treasure hunting dude ranch experience. So they get on their horses, she sets up activities for them to do, they have puzzles to solve and codes to break. The one that got away from 10 years ago, Leo, ends up being one of these tourists on this trip, but then things kind of go off the rails and it turns into an actual treasure hunt. And it was incredibly exciting, and it scratched a really good itch. And because I had such a good time with this, I'm reading another treasure hunting, archaeology, Indiana Jones vibes book with my friend Shubha this month, so I am very excited for that. But this was lovely. It was steamier than I expected, and it was also more attempted murdery than I expected. But overall, I had a really lovely time. And that was everything that I read in September. Would you like to see some stats? Let me show them to you. We read a lot of romance this month, so it is mostly funny and emotional, which is great because usually this pie chart is much darker colors and I read much more dark things. I didn't read a single horror book this month, and I read contemporary and romance books this month. Here's what I need from you. Tell me in the comments what you have been reading this month. Tell me what you're looking forward to reading next month. There will be no TBR this month because I do not have my jar, I do not have my bookshelves. We are just flying by the seat of our pants. Sometimes when life is in flux and you are in transition, stuff gets a little hairy, but we'll get through this together. Let me know how the audio quality is. I think it's pretty echoey in here, so I will try to fix that. Thank you for your patience on that. I also would love to hear, for those of you who are left here, if you have any thoughts or opinions or feelings about end of year content, if there's anything that you would like to see from me as we enter the fall and winter seasons. I have, I think, one more slot in October that I'm looking for a video for, so let me know if you have any fall suggestions for things that I could do. I've got a cozier video lined up and a more horror video lined up, so if there's something else you want to see from me, please let me know. And I'm trying to be more active on TikTok, so if you want to see more things from me, go follow me over there. And that is it. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited for October, and I will see you all next time. Bye.